would come from Ithaca, and we would go to my house first. And no matter what time of the day, night, week, Tony was sitting on the porch waiting. And well, the first time we came, we had this little English Hillman Minx, and there was a, it was a small car, and Celeste was sitting in the back, and we had a rack because that's where we had to put our suitcases, because it wouldn't fit in the car. So we pull up to 218 Ulysses Street. Tony gets up, comes out, and he looks, and he looks at the car, and he looks at the rack, and he says, "Hey, why do you got a rack?" He says, "You know, carpentiere." Okay, so that was one episode. Yeah. One other time, in 1955, when I got hired, we came in. I had a 1955 Pontiac, but it was used. It was a station wagon. And so I pull up to the thing, and of course, Tony's sitting there. He gets up off his bum, and he comes out, and he says, "Hey," he says, "what do you got, a Pontiac?" I says, "Yeah, Tony." He says, "You like?" I says, "Yeah." He said, "Did you ever have a?" "Oh, Jesus Christ," he says, "I got a Pontiac, a Chevrolet, a Buick. I got the Cadillac." That's a Cadillac. Cadillac's a goddamn good car, he says. "You fill them up with the gasoline. You going around the block 3 times, you fill them up. Fill them up again, Joe." He says, So then one other time when we came, it just so happened his wife had died. And it's customary back in Pittsburgh that, you go to the mortuary to see your friends. So went up to, I went up by myself to Slater's, and Tony's sitting in the back, and he's got his chin on his cane, got a little tear coming down his eye, and I expressed my condolences, and all he said was, "Yeah, he was a goddamn good woman." Okay, I know, I'm coming out, that's next. On another occasion when we came, Tony's there and he's got his legs all bandaged, he got a leg all bandaged up. So I says, "Tony, what happened?" He says, "A goddamn axe has fallen in my foot." And I says, "Well, you got many stitches? You cut bad?" "No," he says, "a goddamn axe. Goddamn axe has fallen in my foot." So I says, "Yeah, but I mean, did you, is it you had to get stitches?" He says, "No," he says, "a goddamn trucker axe fallen in my foot." So, okay, yeah. So that's one time there. But, Tony was a little Italian guy, had one tooth in his head, and he always had a curved pipe. And this, like I said, just one time, and now my sister Louise told me about this one. So, Tony says, "I'm a pretty sick man." He says, I got a fever of 210. He says, "I'm a pretty sick man. He says, I go into the dottore. Or the dottore says, "Tony, you're a pretty sick man. You got a fever of 210. And he says, "Doc, what am I going to do?" "Well," he says, "Tony, do you like a hot pepper?" Jesus Christ, I like a hot pepper. He says, "You going into the wharf. You know the wharf? Down at the river, the wharf. And you buy in a bush and a basket, and you eat the whole goddamn thing. You feel much better." So he says, "I going into the wharf. I buy in a bush and a basket. I take it home. I eat the whole goddamn thing." Next day, he says, "I need to go to toilets. I like to take a newspaper with me and toilets, and I like to read, you know. I going into the toilets, he says, I take my pants down, and vroom, I had to, I have to tell you, I have to, wave. That's it. That's the story.